Welcome to Sharing Hope. I'm your host, Jamie George, and our guest is Mr. Josh Baldwin. Josh is a Christian singer, songwriter, worship pastor, and member of the Bethel Music Collective. Bethel Music and Josh released the song Stand in Your Love in 2018 as the lead single to the album Victory. And the song reached the top 10 of the U.S. Christian song charts. It also garnered Baldwin's first nomination at the K-Love Band Awards for Breakout Single of the Year and Worship Song of the Year. He's back in the studio creating more music, and he took a break to be with us today. Welcome, Josh.
Hey, it's so good to be here.
Good to see you, brother. So how did it go? You know, I know you were with David Leonard, who we shot an interview not too long ago.
Yeah.
You guys are back at it, making some music?
We are. I was with him all week last week, and it was so fun. It was just, it didn't really feel like work. And well, I don't know what work feels like anymore. But it just felt like hanging out with your friends, making music, and then also, wow, this gets to be my job. So this is amazing. So
that's pretty special.
Yeah, it was.
And it's always been that way, right? It's a walk in the park. You just decided one day.
It's just always been so easy. It definitely matters who you work with a lot of the times. You know, that helps. That
has a lot to do with it. All right, so I want to hear a little of your story. We got to go into a little bit of that. Okay. But tell me, how are you surviving or thriving in this quarantine? And the story of the house you're in is kind of an interesting story. So I do think you should bring that up too.
Okay. Well, I'll start by saying we're actually doing good in the quarantine. I think, you know, the initial shock of everything, and, you know, in all of my trips getting canceled, and that being like the majority of the way we live and support our family, that initial, like the first 2 weeks were just, you know, a little crazy. And then there's been this crazy peace that, like, once we settle in and have found like our groove and our homeschool groove, which was honestly a big part of it. We don't homeschool, but now we do. And so.
But now we do. There's a refrain for lots of people, right?
Yes. And so I think once we found that groove, it's actually been really good. And it's been a good time to, like, you know, refocus and kind of, you know, and also I'm doing an album, and so I've got new music coming. So it's actually been a good way for me to just, like, okay, I can't travel, so that's not going to get in the way of me creating. So I was at the beginning of the year, I was actually like, okay, how am I going to do all this album stuff and singles and all that and still travel? So that's gotten a lot easier. There's no travel. So so you know, it's been an up and down, obviously. You know, there's like days when you're just very discouraged, or at least I am, and just what's next, what's going to happen, what's the new normal, all that, everything we've all heard. And then there's been days where I just feel the overwhelming sense of the Lord and his peace on everything. And so this is how
California is home right now.
California is home. Yeah. We live in Redding, California, and we love it there. We've been there 5 years. But the minute, like, things started to open up a little bit, well, in Nashville, I started talking to David, and we were like, okay, when can we schedule a time? Because we'd already had to push back things. And so we were just thinking about how we're going to schedule me going to Nashville, and then we have nothing else. So my wife was like, I'd love to just go see my family. She's from Pennsylvania. I'm from North Carolina. And so we were like, you know what, let's take a month and we'll fly to Pennsylvania, and then I'll leave the family here while I go to Nashville, but then I'll come back, and we're going to go down and visit my family in North Carolina next week. And so right now we're in my brother-in-law and sister-in-law's house, which is actually the house that my wife grew up in and the house that her mother grew up in. So it's a really old house. And I'm currently in my niece's room, and she's like 6. So,
oh, that's amazing.
But this is actually the room that my wife grew up in. This was her room growing up in this house.
That's cool. So how old is the house?
Oh my goodness.
I mean, are we talking like almost 100 years old?
I mean, it has to be, because Yeah, this is where her grandparents lived, and this is, yeah, her mother grew up here.
Dang.
I don't know if she wants me to say her age, but
It's just an old house.
it's a really old, I would say, yeah, early 1900s.
Man,
Yeah,
that's amazing. That's amazing.
so
So
beautiful.
tell us a little bit about the transition from North Carolina to California for folks who are not familiar with Bethel music.
Yeah,
Perhaps some folks out there are familiar with Hillsong, which was a church in Australia that started doing music and blew up. And
yeah,
we're grateful for it because we've all been we've been inspired by and moved by so much of the music that came out of there. But Bethel has a similar story in that it's really become a local church that has provided music for the world. And,
right.
and so, and really in the last few years in particular, just flooded kind of churches and given people the opportunity to participate in worship, but coming from a local church. So talk a little bit about maybe a little of your story and going there and what that's been like being a part of that.
Yeah, well, it's been, so I'm trying to think when I actually I met Brian and Jen Johnson, who are over like Bethel Music and our worship department at Bethel Church. And I met them like in 2007, I think, and I think it was at the Call in Nashville, 2007, 7707.
Yeah.
But I met them there, and we just, from there, I was a part of a ministry in Charlotte that were kind of like ministry friends with Bethel Church at the time. And this is before Bethel was like, you know, really known outside of just certain little streams, you know. And so I kind of knew of them and knew of Bill Johnson, and then I started to become friends with Brian and Jen, and we would, you know, talk back and forth, and I'd send them music here and there. They'd send me we led worship at conferences together, just kind of a, you know, friendship across the country. And then as I'm just a worship pastor in Charlotte, North Carolina, at a little church. And I remember I'd been married for 4 years, I think, and I just did like my independent album, just me and my buddies, and like our Kickstarter got together.
Love it.
Did it, and I sent one out to Brian and Jen and some friends all over. You know, you make an album, you just send it to all your friends and like, what do you think? And tell everybody. And so I did that. But then through that, like Bethel started leading some of my songs at church. And then just through that relationship, like a year or so later, they asked me if I wanted to be a part of Bethel Music. So, and that was when I'm like, you know, making this all a lot shorter.
Yes.
But that was when I signed with Bethel Music and stayed in Charlotte. And then eventually a year later, we moved to Reading because we just wanted to be a part of the church. And yeah, the cool thing, Bethel Music was really just formed out of the worship department, the worship ministry of Bethel Church. And it was just, I think a way that Brian was like, the Lord had been doing stuff in the church for years. And I love that it was like, it wasn't like a brand new church that was also like, we got to do albums and it was like this movement, this church that had been around for years. I mean, Brian's grandfather, Bill Johnson's dad, had pastored the church, and then Bill pastors it now. And then now his son, Eric, Brian's older brother, is like our local pastor. So it's this generational thing. And I think out of that, the worship, the ministry just started to grow, and they started writing their own songs. And it was just this, you know, what we want to have a vehicle to get these songs out to the world. And that's how Bethel Music was formed. And so, yeah, so this
has been quite a run for you, man.
It's been a run. It's been, I think, 6 years that I've been a part of Bethel Music now.
Wow. Yeah. How have you been impacted by worship music? You know, there's lots of different kinds of music, and sometimes we get hung up on these adjectives and what they mean, Christian worship and all these things. And I know, talking with you and so many of our friends, you know, it's like, hey, it's just music. You know, music in general is sacred. We're you know, the nature of the world is we tend to categorize stuff, so we kind of, you know, almost unwillingly sometimes we're like, fine, we'll give it the adjective. But what was it that really pulled you into, let's call it vertical, this music where, it's just really prayer is set to lyrics and melodies. What pulled you into that, and what does that do for you? As you know, you get to do this is a part of your vocation. What's that like?
I grew up in church. My dad's a pastor, and not only that, he was a worship pastor. He was he did a lot of the music. So I mean, music's been a part of my life since I was a kid, and and mostly in the church. I mean, mostly surrounded around like Christian music. And even though my dad did grow up on 70s rock, and that's his favorite thing. But then I remember there's a story. He got saved, and then he was gonna he went to like school to be a pastor and got his degree and went to seminary and all that. And then he came out of that and was gonna pastor this little Methodist church, and all he had was an electric guitar. It was actually a 68 Stratocaster. And he was like, they're not going to let me play this electric guitar at the Methodist church. So he traded it straight up for a Yamaha acoustic guitar. And
oh,
anyway,
good.
Yeah.
You got to explain to people how painful that is.
I mean, I don't know, that guitar, if I had it today, would maybe be $10,000.
Oh gosh.
Maybe more. Sunburst Stratocaster. I still, when he passed on the Yamaha acoustic to me. So but when I see it hanging up in my room, I always think about what it could have been. So yeah, I grew up in church and in music, and I think it is funny that we kind of categorize things, because I think a lot of that. I think writing music is all expression, obviously, of just our worship towards the Lord. I mean, worship isn't just music. We all know that it's it's the overflow of our daily lives. And I think, I think sometimes we categorize too much of like the corporate vertical worship together with, a congregation, and we think that's just worship. And that's just, the form of worship that we all know, because we all gather together corporately, we sing, and that's the part that I love. And I think as I've become more and more, or as I've grown in songwriting, I've tried to like learn how to write songs that maybe are a little more accessible for churches like that, but also not just limit myself to only writing those kind of songs, if that makes sense at all.
Yeah.
But I think I just learned that I love, when growing up and playing drums for my dad as he led worship, I just found this love for the corporate worship setting and actually leading worship.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, for somebody who leads often, right? All the questions I get asked is, been on the road with you and Joel and Luke and the boys, is when you sing the same songs over and over again, how does it stay connected? Are there times it's hard not to just dial it in because you sung it so many times? How do you find connection with a song that, and it's not like, especially if you have a song that's super popular, it's popular for a reason, people have kind of connected with it. You can't kind of not do it, because people are like, hey, please sing the song, because that's why I'm here. And so you're kind of in this, like, you kind of have to do it to serve people. How do you stay connected to it?
And that's a great question. And I mean, you get asked that a lot, but it doesn't feel super hard for me, because it's more about like the people and connecting with people and trying to bring what the Lord's given me and give it, and just, that's all, like, invite the Lord to come together. And so I think even songs that can get old, it's because every night is different when you're out, and there's a different crowd every night. And so I think it's the people that make everything.
Each crowd kind of brings its own energy, right?
It is. And it's crazy. A friend of mine said this one time we were on a tour, a worship nights tour with Bethel Music. And she just said this from the stage. She's like, this moment right here with all of us gathered will never happen again. This all of us right here, every person in this room gathered right now might not ever be in the same room ever again together. And I started thinking about that one. I was like, wow, that makes it way more special and way more intentional.
Yeah.
Each song, and to think, okay, I know I sang this song last night. I know I sang it the night before that, but this is different because these people weren't there last night, and they've got something, and there's more stories represented out there, and there's more people that maybe need to hear something, and not everybody has probably heard this song. There's It's
Yes.
easy. It is easy to get trapped in that. Like, I'm tired of this, so everyone's probably tired of this.
Right. But they're not. And the stories are pretty powerful, right? Is there a story that sticks out? Somebody that hit you up on Twitter or Instagram or sent you an email? Is there a story you could share with us that one of these songs hit them at a special time in their life or anything else? Is there a story that kind of sticks out?
Yeah, there's a couple that are personal, hit home, like my family, and then there's like my father. Actually, I have a song on my last album called Abraham, and it's about our Abraham, the father of our faith. And the funny thing is, it wasn't this super inspirational kind of moment writing it. It was me and my buddy were talking about him, and he had actually had a dream that we wrote a song called Abraham. But that's like, which that is a very, that itself is like a big, like, wow. But that was like all he had. He came the next day and he was like, I had a dream that we wrote a song called Abraham. And I was like, okay. What else? And he's like, that's it.
That's all I got. Yeah.
So from there, we were just, let's write a song in his perspective and like what he was going through when he's given all these promises from the Lord, but they're not happening yet. And meanwhile, he's walking up this mountain, taking his son to be, sacrifice. And it's like, what's going through his head? So we wrote it out of that. And I remember just thinking, oh, this is cool. Like, this is a great song about Abraham. But nothing more to me. And I sent in my dad, and my dad's just like, this is amazing. This is my story. This is my story. And I was like looking through it, and I was like, oh yeah. And then I'm looking through it my own self, and I'm like, this feels like my story. This feels like, and it just like one of those moments where I'm like, oh, this is the father of our faith. And he went through things that the Lord has like used as like, hey, when you have all these promises that you've been given and they haven't come to pass yet, like you can look back on lives in the word and see how the Lord's brought people through, which in this season, wow.
So suddenly, I mean, to me, you're describing inspiration, right? Like suddenly you've just written a song about an archetype. Like, oh, wait a second, father of our faith. What if that actually means this is what all of us go through?
Right. I mean, yeah. And it's funny because it seems so simple when I think, and I was like, I wasn't thinking about any of that when we were writing it. I wish I would love to say that I'm so
hey, this is historical and metaphorical. Yeah.
No, I was not thinking about that at all. It could have been, but I love that. I love that I got to look back at it and then see, because it totally feels like the Lord to me. And it doesn't feel like anything that I like worked up. And,
that's beautiful.
And,
So can you take us to this? I've been asking everybody this, and I'm interested, especially, for those who are listening, who are in the arts or musicians, or maybe just entrepreneurs or trying to start something. And we joked a little bit in the beginning that you're in a season now where you get to really enjoy your vocation.
Yeah.
It feels like fun, it almost doesn't feel like work and that sort of thing, but it wasn't always like that. Can you go back to a time in your story where you dealt with uncertainty and maybe it was really, really heavy, maybe similar to kind of what a lot of folks are dealing with right now?
Yeah.
How did you get through it, and how are you different because of it?
Yeah. Wow. Good question. So when I think about that, I go back to those days when I was in North Carolina and I was a worship pastor at a little church there that I still love to this day, and still very close with them. And there was a couple times when the uncertainty hit, and there was one in particular that was very intense for us. But before Bethel Music came and all this, there's these times of uncertainty where I go back to what I was just saying about Abraham, where I feel like I've been given all these promises or words from leaders or just people in our life speaking, and like we really feel like you're called, and all these things that I felt like from the Lord, but they weren't happening. And I'm like, I'm not good at just making stuff happen. There's some people have this like grace on their life to just actually make something happen.
Yeah.
I don't. I'm just like have to.
And isn't that harder when people are saying the things like, "Hey, I really think God's calling you to," or "I heard," and you're like, "Well, where is he? Because it's not happening."
Exactly. And I'm like, well, I'm getting into my 30s now, so I don't know what, I'm starting a family. I would love for all this to happen, and those were definitely uncertain times. And I remember in those moments, I was just, when I would hear from other people what the Lord's saying for me, but maybe I didn't hear for myself, like I feel like I can't hear what's next. And I'm reading the word, and I still don't like know what's next. I remember my dad saying, like, what did he say to you last? What was the last thing the Lord said to you? Well, just keep doing that until you hear something else. You know, just keep, where are you assigned right now? Okay, I'm here. I'm with this church that I love. I'm with these people, this worship team that I love. And so I'm just going to like be all in until I find out what's next. And I'm not going to like, you know, just peace out on them because I'm scared and I'm trying to make something happen. But that was the time. And then the Bethel music thing came, and it was an unbelievable, like, I mean, it was unbelievable. I could be a part of Bethel music, still stay at my church in Charlotte. And for me, it was like the best of both. It was amazing. And then that whole year that I was flying back across the country, and my wife was just, she kept getting these, like, she would get dreams that we're supposed to move and things like this. And I'm in the middle, like, no, we're not. This is the whole, my uncertainty is, okay, I do have this thing over here, but I still have my church. I still have my family. I'm from North Carolina. I'm not going to leave them and go all the way across the country to chase something down that I don't even know, you know. So I remember that moment. And we just sat back, and my wife and I, we started praying, and we were like, okay, we need to hear from you, Lord. And we were throwing up, you know, all kinds of fleece. But it was like, listen, Lord, if this is what you called us and we want to step out in faith, I don't want to be disobedient if I feel like you're saying something, obviously. But also, this is a big thing that we're pulling away from our family, you know.
Doesn't it seem hard when it's like, I'm not leaving a bad thing. You're asking me to leave something really good. That, like, if things are a disaster, it's like, walk out in faith. But
totally. That part would be easy. All right, well, peace out. Over here. But I'd grown up in church. My dad, you know, we've gone from different churches. So I was like, I'm not gonna leave this a bad way. I want to leave this well. In other words, I want to go to something, go to what's next, and not just leave just to leave. And so I think in that time the Lord was so faithful, and so many times he came through in like little ways where it just made it so obvious to us that this was what was next. And I remember even just talking with our pastor, and that was just like one of the scariest, most nerve-wracking things I ever did, was like, I think I'm supposed to move to a Redding, you know, just, there was such a peace on it. He was so great. He's like, I feel like that's what you're supposed to do. And we just, even to the point of our house, we were like, Lord, we want our house to be easy to sell. My wife actually threw this. She's the real fire in our home. And she was like, Lord, if we're supposed to move, I don't even want to put this house on the market. Just I wanted to sell it. And I remember thinking, like, I'm almost want to pray like a prayer behind her, like, Lord, if you don't have to do, like,
hey, I'm the backstop. If that doesn't work, I got a really great realtor.
I'm like, Lord, we can put it on the market. It's fine. But literally, like, 2 days before we were about to put it on the market, we were getting someone to come take pictures of the house. And a buddy of mine called me, and I don't even know that he knew we were moving. He just knew I was a part of Bethel. And he was like, hey man, my wife and I are looking for a home, and we love your neighborhood. If you hear of anybody selling, let us know. And he said, I know you're with Bethel. If you guys ever think about moving to Redding, like, will you let us know? And I was like, oh my goodness. Like, amazing. So he came the next day. They looked at our house and offered us like full price for it.
Oh,
and,
my heavens.
That was like, okay, Lord. All right. Here we go. Times are certain now. They're not uncertain anymore. And so, it was just the Lord, every little thing, every little time we would step out.
So is that part of it for you? It was there's an unknown, there's uncertainty. I don't know what to do, but I can take this next step of faith. I mean, was that it?
You know what? I think I was talking with my wife yesterday even about this. I think because of that, because times like that happen, it's because we have these little testimonies in our life. It, like, the next time something like that comes up, it's a little, we almost have, like, it's almost like I have no right to question the Lord or quite as much as I did, you know? It's like, okay, well, I've seen his hand on my life, and I've seen at least when I know enough to know that it's time to step out, when I take that step, he's going to come with me. He's going to step with me. He's going to move with me. And really, it's funny you say move with me. It's like he's actually way ahead of me.
Yeah. Like, you're just finally aware of how he's moving.
Finally aware that we're moving, you know?
Yeah. Sometimes they're like, God really showed up. And you're like, well, actually, he was always there. I just was aware that he was there. Yeah.
No, totally.
Yeah, totally. That's so good. So that did change you, though. Like, there was, like, for you, part of the exercise of it, it was like building spiritual muscle. Like, I mean, when God calls you now, it's just a little bit easier to walk out. Yeah,
it really is. And that move, I mean, obviously it opened up so much for us. So much has happened. But, and not just in the physical that people could obviously see, but just in us as a family, our walk with the Lord. It just moves things like that. You know, obviously when you step out, like we're saying, it just strengthens your faith. It strengthens every part of just our trust with the Lord. And I love that. And it's strengthened our family. It's been such a great thing for our family. And our church. And I'm still like, I love how the Lord, he knew my prayer. He knew my heart was to stay close to the things that we'd helped build in North Carolina. And we are still very close with them. Even the guy that took my place there was the guy that I was like, Lord, this guy would be great. And he was working at another church. And it was just like, and it just happened. And it happened all without me after we moved. And it was just like another little confirmation of, okay, all right, the Lord is in all this. And it's just
really, that's beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing that part of your story with us, man, because I mean, we're all facing it. We're all dealing with it. And it's inspiring to hear how other people have walked through seasons of uncertainty.
Yeah.
So I know you're working on some new stuff, but there's some stuff out there. If people wanted to keep up with Josh Baldwin, what's going on in his world and what's coming out, what's coming soon, how can they hear, how can they follow you and all that stuff?
Yeah. So, this is a big year for music for me. I'm glad I was already planning to put stuff out. It works out great. But so I'm working on a new album with all new songs, but and that's going to be out later this year in the fall. And but right now, I actually just a month ago released a new album, a new live worship album, worship EP, and it's there's a couple new songs on there, but mostly songs from my last album that we lead a lot at our church in Bethel, and we were like, okay, it's time. None of these had gone live, and so we're like, we wanted to put these live versions out, and it's just, I say raw, but it sounds way better than just raw. But I mean raw in a sense of we didn't do any doctoring. It's no overdubs, no editing. It's just as is, as we let it.
Beautiful.
And so that's out. It's called Live at Church, and then I have my first single from the new stuff is coming out in a few weeks, I think, and it's called Evidence. And I'm really excited about that. And,
very cool. All right, and so where can they follow you? You have a website, or should they do social media?
Social media, Josh Baldwin, Instagram. I think I would say Twitter. I'm more of a retweeter than I am a tweeter.
I love it. So Instagram is a good place to keep up with you.
Instagram is probably the best place to keep up with me.
Fantastic. I love it. Well, bro, good to see you, and can't wait to hear the new stuff. Glad you're at it. And yeah, man, and stay safe and enjoy the family up there in the Northeast.
I will. Thank you so much.